This week we've got our full interview with Leigh Fuge.
This is Anyone Can Play Guitar, the podcast for musicians and music lovers that takes you behind the scenes of the music industry. This week is brought to you in partnership with MGR Music. Ever wanted to learn an instrument, hone your skills, or pick up something completely new? You can get so far by yourself, however professional guidance can make all the difference. With a network of tutors right across the UK and rates starting from as little as £15 per hour, visit mgrmusic.com now to get started.
Hello and welcome to episode 65 and our interview with Leigh Fuge, with me, Ben, and him,
James.
So last week was our interview with Laurel.
Yeah.
Here's a little snippet as a reminder, and if you want to go back and download it, please do.
Writing music has to come out of nowhere, out of the sky. You know, you can't sit down and decide you're going to write a great song.
Yeah. Just sat forward in my chair for this.
You got really into it.
I'm ready.
Well,
I'm ready for this episode.
I'm gonna I want to reverse the tables and go, James, give me some Fuge facts.
Woohoo! Some FFs.
Some double Fs.
So, some FFs for you, Ben.
Excellent.
Started out as a guitarist.
Mm-hmm.
Has loved the guitar, for a long time. Moved into teaching the guitar, which was where the connection with Matthew from MGR came in. But made the leap, fundamentally, from a normal 9-to-5 job to say, no, I want to pursue my career in music. He made the leap and, off he went to then start building out initially from guitar tutoring. But as he'll talk about, his philosophy of just saying yes to whatever opportunity comes up has stood him in good stead as he's, tested out guitar equipment. He writes articles for guitar magazines. He's doing bits of work with Cool Amplification. He's been doing some video tutorials as well as...
He does do them, I've watched them.
You name it, that his whole ethos is around, I'll give it a go, I'll do it. And he's all in, and he's built a career in music that he is also in a band as well. And they've recently put their album out. Yeah,
they kind of stepped it up this year, haven't they?
Yeah, after quite a long break, I think. And so he's doing the traditional in a band, doing music, but he's also shown that you can supplement your career or the whole being in a band bit with all of these other activities that gives them a level of income.
Excellent.
It's a bit of a blueprint in terms of how you can go about doing these things. So if you want more information about Leigh, he's got his own dedicated website, leighfugeguitar.com. Also, you can find him at swanseaguitarlessons.com.
Yeah.
If you want to go on the old social media, you'll find him on Twitter and Instagram at Leigh Fuge Guitar.
Tells you everything you know in those 3 words.
Indeed. So, really good. You'll hear in the episode he's got a massive passion for this, for everything music related. I could have talked to him for absolutely ages. It's a long, quite wide-ranging conversation. Really good interview. So, thanks again to Leigh for doing it. And here you go. Enjoy. Remember, a great way to support the show is to go on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and a review. It really does make a massive difference for the show. Now, on with the episode.
Yeah, well, my name is Leigh, and I'm from South Wales, from a place called Swansea. And I don't really know what I would classify myself as other than a musician, because I sort of tread across a few different career paths. So I sort of work, as I mentioned, as a teacher. I run my own tuition business. I also write articles for a couple of different sort of guitar publications. I play with a band. I do a bit of session work. I do a bit of sort of gear demos for companies. So yeah, I just sort of, anything guitar related, I'm sort of, involved with when possible.
Excellent. So how long have you, or when did you first get the music bug?
I think I was probably about 11 or 12 when I first got into the idea of playing. I've always been into music. I was brought up sort of like, my dad was always into 60s and 70s rock, so I was always sort of around it. And my cousin was always very big into sort of like 80s sort of like hair metal bands.
Right.
So I think between the two of them, they sort of gave me a good sort of musical education. And then further along the line, then I sort of found the guitar, and I realised that was the thing in that madness that I really sort of liked, and that was the sort of start of it. Then really, I just sort of became obsessed.
What drew you to the guitar particularly?
I guess it was sort of when I was listening to music when I was younger. There was always like a certain thing that I liked about rock music, but I never quite knew what it was. And I remember that one day, a friend of mine that I went to school with, he said he'd got a guitar, and I went over his house after school, and he played something by the Foo Fighters on the guitar. And something in my head just sort of clicked then, that the sound I'd always been listening to on the records was that thing that he was holding in front of me. So that kind of made me think, okay, well, that's the thing that I've been liking the sound of, so therefore that must be what I want to do.
That's a good way to find out. Well, can you remember the Foo Fighters track?
I think it was All My Life.
Oh, yeah.
2002, I think it was.
Yeah, got those power chords at the start, hasn't it?
Yes.
Dun, 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 yeah. Sorry, James, I'm going to stop doing that, because I think I'll start doing that if I don't stop now.
That's how we'd often write songs, to be fair. We'd make noises at each other until someone could play it on an instrument.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think learning an instrument in general, though, is something that we want to talk to you a lot about today. And so let's just set the scene a bit. I mean, you've given a great example there in terms of sort of what drew you to initially be, wow, that's where that music, where that sound comes from. I want to learn that. You obviously teach a lot of people. What are the various different reasons that you see drawing people into learning an instrument?
That's a good question, actually. I've seen quite a few different reasons. So it kind of varies from, young children who just want to sort of discover something new about themselves. They sort of get into various things and decide that maybe an instrument's what they want to do. Right up to, I've taught people who pick up the guitar, in their 60s. And it's often a case that they say, I wish I'd done this sooner. So I think there's quite a few reasons why people get into it, really. But yeah, it does sort of stem from, there's some people who want to turn it into a career, and there's other people who just sort of get through life and, almost get to a point and they regret not doing it sooner. So it's quite interesting to find out what people's reasoning is as well. I'm always interested in that.
Is it a myth that sort of younger people will pick things up quicker?
Yes and no, in my experience. So I think younger people definitely pick up the sort of, the general understanding maybe a bit quicker, and maybe some of the motor skills come a bit quicker to a younger student. But what I often find with, older students is the big difference is, in terms of progression, is, when I was either 11 or 12 when I started playing, and I was in a position where, I could come home from school every day by 4 o'clock, I'd pick the guitar up and I'd play until 10:30 at night. I'd go to bed, I'd get up an hour early in the morning to have an extra hour before school to play. I'd take my guitar to school, practice in the lunch break. So I was consistently with a guitar in my hand. But when you sort of find, an adult decides at some point to pick a guitar up, by that point in life, you've already got other commitments, like, a full-time job, maybe you've got a family. So there's a lot of other variables in the fold there where, you can't commit that much time to playing. So I think that's where the myth came from, in that, younger people obviously have a lot more disposable time. Whereas, I suppose if you were, let's say, 36 and you had 2 kids and a full-time job, and someone said, right, you've got to practice for 5 hours a day, you think, well, where am I going to find where am I going to find that 5 hours?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Does that I guess impact how you would potentially go about teaching someone? So if their circumstances are such that they do or don't have a lot of spare time, will that influence how you approach the sort of the student?
Oh, of course, yeah, and it also depends what their goals are. I like to get to know the person that I teach. So I mean, I've spoke to loads of different teachers over the time I've been doing it about how we all approach it, because I don't think there's a set method for teaching guitar. I think everyone's kind of got their own way with doing it. And some people like to follow a rigid, this is how I teach, this is lesson 1, this is lesson 2, and that applies to everyone. But I like to get to know the person and get to know, what their routines are. And because I think the big trick is, especially when dealing with, people with less time to practice, is finding ways to give them something that they can get the most quality in a short space of time. Rather than say, right, this is going to take you 6 hours, maybe there's something intense you can work on for 20 minutes a day that will get you, the same results over, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is that, you sort of sit there and work on it. So I think it's about trying to find out how you can give people things that benefit them with, I suppose, the minimal disruption to their routines. Because I think you never want practicing to be seen as a burden. And especially when you have other commitments in life, like I made the joke about finding 5 hours a day to practice, it's just not realistic. So I think it's all about finding how do you get the most out of people's time, without impacting their time as well.
Yeah, that makes good sense, because I think if somebody's...
It's like getting fit, isn't it?
Yeah, if someone's got
the gym
1 hour to spend, but it's really rushed, and in their day they feel like they should be doing other things, then the whole thing of learning the guitar or any instrument should be an enjoyable experience, right? And
yeah,
so that totally makes sense, not sort of making a plan that someone has to commit to X amount of time when that's not an amount of time that they have.
Yeah, and that's what I always say to people, is that it should be enjoyable. There should never be a point in the process where you stop enjoying it. I mean, obviously there'll be times where you get frustrated and times, that challenge you and push you, but ultimately you'll still enjoy those times because you know what's coming at the end of it. I think a lot of that stems from not making it a burden on you.
Yeah, what are some of the other things that you find frustrates people? So, I mean, I remember when I first picked up a guitar, the first thing that frustrated me is that I needed to... I've got a terrible memory, so
He does.
I really do. So I'd be looking at chords, I'd have forgotten what a G was or a C was. I'd be having to keep my fingers on these strings, and I'd absolutely had no sort of tough skin built up on my fingers at this point. So that the whole thing just was like, this isn't working for quite a period of time. I sort of vividly remember being my frustrations. But what other sort of things do you see that typically can almost, I guess, potentially put people off before they've started?
Well, the one you've mentioned is a big one, sort of fear of not being able to remember things, because obviously, as when you learn, there's a lot of things to remember, and how do you remember 1,001 different things in a language that you learned 3 weeks beforehand? One thing I've noticed, and I don't know whether this is sort of, I guess, maybe my sort of interpretation of the way people view things in 2018, but I think younger students especially get frustrated at the idea of the guitar now being a long-term thing. And I think the way that people have been kind of conditioned these days, I think, is to... Everything's instant now, isn't it? Everything's like instant gratification. You look something and it's there. You have it straight away. You don't have to... you've got things like Amazon Prime. You don't need to go to the shop anymore because you buy something online and it'll be delivered to your house in less than 24 hours,
Yeah.
Everything's so instant now. And I think if you turn around and say to someone, well, this thing's going to take you at least a couple of months to get proficient, and then if you want to get really good, you're talking, 10 years plus. And I think that can frustrate people a little bit, because I think the way that, I guess modern conveniences have pushed people is that everything is so instant. You almost don't have to work at anything these days. But the guitar is something that you still have to put the time into and, actually do some work.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's become a sort of cultural norm now for this generation to just be like, right, bang, it's done, move on.
I should learn it.
Something new now. Ah.
And admittedly, the modern conveniences are something that, I use myself sometimes. I'll come up against something and I can't remember a certain chord or a scale pattern, and I'll just type it into Google and it'll tell me the answer. But I think in a lot of ways that convenience has substituted the hard work side of things. Whereas when I started learning, we didn't really have any online resources. There was sort of like one website, which was called MX Tabs, which was just horrendous. And other than that, you had to either buy a magazine or just listen to a song and try and figure out what was going on. But now you type in any song and there's, 1,000,001 tutorials and tabs that play the music back to you and all sorts now.
I remember buying those books as well, those really expensive tablature books. Whoa.
And they were always wrong as well. There was always bits missing. But yeah, I think that's definitely one thing people find very frustrating, is because the information and the answers are so easy to find, but the actual work to get yourself to that level is you have to push yourself there. So I definitely seen a bit of that. But yeah, I think a lot of people that struggle, I guess, is more just in, I guess, the sort of, the desire to want to be good straight away,
Right. Okay. And I think just building on what you've just been saying about the new cultural norms, and because everything can, you can go on the internet and search for something and typically find something pretty easily.
Yeah.
I guess somebody could get so far with watching YouTube clips or, just consuming whatever's available. But how far can you realistically get versus the advantages of, going to someone like yourself and having dedicated tuition?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a lot of things that you can't cover in a video. There's certain little things like hand positioning, or even just the need to ask someone a question. I think that's where video and, written tuition sort of struggles, because you can't actually physically say to someone, what am I doing wrong? All you've got is you watch this video of someone else doing it and then you have to replicate that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember always going to Ben and say, how does my hand go from here to there? I can't do it. And you're right, he would sort of physically grab my hand and say, well, you do that. And I'd be like, right.
I was never that mean, James.
Well...
But yeah, I think that's definitely the biggest advantage, I think, is that it's little things as well. So even things like, if you're doing a chord with a particularly awkward stretch, sometimes changing the position of your thumb can make all the difference in getting your fingers to the right place. But if you're only watching a video of someone showing you what that chord is, you'd never think about, or maybe I should move my thumb slightly. Or what if I straighten my elbow or bend my elbow in this way? That's something that someone who knows that piece can sit with you and say, oh, well, why don't you try this? And, see if that makes a difference.
Yeah, the video hasn't gone on that journey with you in terms of where you currently are.
Yeah. And also, they look very proficient, don't, in the videos as well. So you think, oh, well, if they can do it, I can obviously bend that way. So, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Sometimes the video can only take you so far.
Yeah, there's definitely a human element that needs to happen as well.
And I would imagine it would be good to get your point of view, is that having some kind of scheduled lessons would almost sort of keep people on task as well. If you're just sitting in your room, you've got the option to go online and watch something or try something, or if you're just practicing in your room, if you know that you've got a lesson coming up next week and you'd sort of set a goal to learn whatever piece or whatever it is, there's almost it's self-regulating in some way to give you that target to say, right, no, I must do this. Does that happen in any way?
Oh yeah, absolutely. People will always want to do it because they never want to show up and say that they haven't done it. And I'm quite laid back as a teacher. I always sort of say to people, it is what it is. You can only fit so much into your, your regular schedules. But that definitely exists, so that people don't want to feel like, they don't want to feel like they've almost embarrassed themselves, I suppose, is a good way to look at it. They've shown up and you've given them something to practice, but they haven't practiced it. So I think that knowledge does tend to push people a little bit, because you sort of think, well, yeah, if I'm going to go back there and show him that I've practiced it, I probably should practice it.
Yeah.
Or at least attempt to.
So, if I was about to think, right, I can't play the guitar at all. I'm about to. I really know that this is something that I want to do. What's the first step? So I feel like, do I need a guitar to start with? Before I go to a lesson, how would I pick where to go? Who to go? What's my thought process as somebody who would be thinking of starting to learn the guitar for the first time?
I've seen a couple of different versions of that, really. So I have, had people come to me who've never played before, and they've been fully kitted out with, I've had someone come to me before who'd never played guitar before, and he showed up with a $2,500 Gibson acoustic, and he bought it because he said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it properly. I thought, okay. But then I've also had people come to me and say, they know that they're after a specific thing, but they don't quite know what. And I think those people are always interesting, because I guess I'm sort of quite sort of known on like social media around South Wales, because I've got quite a big guitar collection. So I think a lot of people then, when they're looking for a certain thing, I'm the sort of person they'll come and speak to, because they know they can get access to a couple of different things. And I'm always happy to help people with those sorts of things. It's sort of half the battle is picking what you want from a guitar as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's very much depends on the person. Different people, some people are happy to just pull the trigger and say, I'll buy this $2,500 guitar and I'll see what happens. Other people might want to spend 50 quid on a guitar, and other people don't really know what they want, and they're sort of trying to almost find out what their ideal guitar is before they even play a note. So yeah, it's interesting to see again. It's such a varied spectrum.
Yeah. I genuinely didn't have a clue what I wanted when I first got a guitar, and I think, Ben, you didn't really sort of know for a while. After we'd started playing together, you eventually got to a point where you knew what you wanted and the sound, but that took quite a while, didn't it?
Well, there's two reasons for that. Yeah, one is I'm left-handed as well, so I don't get much choice for guitars. But you're right; it took me a little while, because I didn't know, did I want to sound like Noel Gallagher, or did I want to sound like Brian Moloko, or did I want to sound like John Frusciante? So did I go Fender, Gibson, SG? Yeah, and for me, because there's not much choice, it did limit it a little bit and did force my hand a little bit. But also, like you've said there, Lee, $2,500. I've never spent $2,500 on a guitar, but £300 was my second guitar, and that still to me is a lot of money. It's still like,
of course it is.
Yeah. So you've got to make a decision of, if I want to sound like a certain person, let's see what that person plays with, and then I would always say, go to a guitar shop and just practice with one. Go in the soundproof booth and just crank it up. You might sound rubbish because it might be your second guitar or even your first guitar, and that's okay, because everyone sounded rubbish when they first started. Sometimes that's still too. Yeah,
that's what I say to everyone. We all start at the same place, because the people we look up to as players, they haven't always been able to play. At the level we recognise them for. At some point, they were, learning what an E minor chord is, or learning their first scale, or whatever. Everyone starts from that sort of initial point. But that's what you said there is pretty much spot on. When someone comes to me and they say, I don't know what I want, I often ask the question of, well, what do you listen to? Who are your favourite guitar players? If you turn around and say, you like Led Zeppelin, then you want a Les Paul. If you turn around and say you like Eric Clapton, then you want a Strat. There's certain things that can be answered with a question, I think.
Yeah.
No,
and sometimes you can only get what you can afford, I guess, as well, which is nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and there's that's the other flip side of it as well, as budget.
Yeah.
I think people these days that are learning now are in a great place, though, because, I mean, even like I only started playing in the early 2000s, and if you spent less than £200 on a guitar then, it was just rubbish.
Mm-hmm.
But now you can pick up a £250, £300 guitar, and you can go off and tour with it, you know, and it's just as good as anything. So I think the margins for low-priced guitars, the quality of them has increased so much. Even when you think those Botman Squires that people used to get from Argos,
Oh, yeah.
those are pretty good these days. They've come on so fast.
Really?
What they were, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
it's easier to get a great guitar now for less money.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because you used my one, didn't you, James? We restrung my left hand and right hand for you, didn't we? And it was still sound shocking.
Upside down. But yeah, I think there's something in maybe progressing through instruments as well. Because I remember when our bass player went from his pretty much original, he used his first bass guitar for quite some time. And then
it was definitely a handful of gigs, wasn't it? It was definitely a good year and a half of
quite
practice,
a while. And then he made the jump to the Rickenbacker, and the difference that he found was significant in terms of how he could sort of move his hands across the strings and
the actual sound of it.
Yeah, but if he'd got that on day one, I don't think it would have been the right move for him.
Yeah.
No, definitely not.
I think as you go through the process, you learn what you like about different instruments and the feel, and you learn like what sort of qualities you want in a guitar.
Yeah. So sticking with our novices for a moment. So as somebody who's about to approach learning an instrument for the first time, should I have an expectation that ultimately I should be able to read music or not?
I would say no, because I think a lot of guitar players don't read. I think, there's obviously a crowd of players who are very proficient readers, and those tend to be the people who do a lot of, the orchestra work or the sort of the film scoring work or even like the cruise ship stuff. But I think when you sort of think of your general guitar player that you see playing in a pub band or a touring band or just someone who plays for fun, most of those people don't read, especially proper music. I mean, I don't even think I know any guitar players that actually read in my sort of circle of people that I'm sort of friendly with. I don't think any of those. I know a couple of bass players who read and a couple of drummers, but not actually guitar players.
Yeah, I think that'll be encouraging to quite a lot of people, because I think that could potentially be quite a daunting prospect for a lot of people, the thought of that.
Yes. Yeah, it is, yeah. I've actually had people come to me and say, I want to learn, but I don't want to learn how to read music. I was like, okay, well, that's good, because you don't actually need to.
Exactly, yeah. That was one of the first things I thought when I started learning the guitar was, well, I'm not allowed to because I can't read music. And then there was a friend of ours called Johnny, who's an extremely talented guitarist. He went, I can't read music. I learned from this, and he gave us a copy of Total Guitar. And he just had tab in. I was like, oh, so those numbers mean that? He went, yep. I was like, well, that's a lot easier than I anticipated.
That was my Bible growing up.
Yeah. I don't even know if they still make it.
Yeah, I still subscribe to it now. Just
excellent.
It's great. It's great as like a resource, because it's great for like exercises. They've gone more tuition based, so I love it.
Okay.
Every month now there's sort of a different improve your picking or improve your chords or this, that, and the other. And it's great as a teacher because I can look at these exercises and think, oh, that might be useful to show someone, or that, it sort of opens your eyes to different techniques that you could show people or different ways to practice things.
Yeah. So what's your go-to if I was either first day learning a guitar or 6 months into learning a guitar? Would you go tab or chord? Which way do you go?
I go chords first of all.
Right. Any particular reason?
Only because I think it's quite good to be able to go away from your first lesson playing a little tune.
Yes, I would agree. That's what I used to do when I used to teach the odd guitar lesson.
And even if it's nothing specific, if you can string 2 chords together and you can strum a simple sort of 4-beat rhythm, then you've got away an hour later and you've learned how to play guitar. And I think that's the most encouraging thing. Whereas you could spend the first hour, showing someone how to read tab, but by the time you've taught them, they might not have time to actually learn anything.
Yeah.
Whereas you can show someone how to play 2 chords and string them together in, 30 minutes, and then, it's like, right, off you go now, there's your first song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a lot of songs are just 3 chords, so they're not far off learning a
Exactly,
song.
yeah. That's it.
So if you go chords first, this is a little bit off, James, sorry. Do you have a go-to riff or go-to song where you think after 2 or 3 lessons, they've gone away and they've learned, I don't know, Smoke on the Water, because everyone starts with that, or Sunshine of Your Love, or something like that, is just as a go-to, is anything you particularly use?
The one I tend to gravitate towards first is Knocking on Heaven's Door.
Okay.
Because it's just G, C, and D, or G, E, say. And like, I like to spend like the first 2 or 3 weeks talking about, I always show people, the first lesson I always show people E minor and A major, because you can string those 2 chords together really simply.
Yeah.
And I teach people straight away, the first thing I show them is those 2 chords and how to play a 4-beat rhythm. Just simple 1, 2, 3, 4, and then change chord. Because straight away there you've got 2 chords and you can play in time. And then, time permitting and how easy it is to find it, I throw in a D chord. So by the end of the first lesson, you can string E minor, A, and D together. Off you go. There's your little, your rhythmic pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And then over the next couple of weeks, then sort of breaking down, other chords and different strumming patterns. So usually I shoot for, by the end of week 3 or 4, you can string a G, a D, and a C together and play Knocking on Heaven's Door. And then it's sort of, the way I teach, I like to teach through song.
Yeah.
So obviously, I don't have I use that as my go-to first song just because everyone knows it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't teach people with a song list in mind. So I get people around about week 3 to write me a list of their top 10 songs. And then what we then do is we look at those songs and say, right, what have we learned so far and what can we put into this? Because I think it's so easy as a guitar player to say to other people, this is what I learned, this is what I think is useful. But really, it doesn't matter what I think, it's what they think. And the songs that I think are relevant, they might not think are relevant.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite important to frame things in a way that the student is interested as well. So, if you're only interested in learning Ed Sheeran songs, then we're not going to talk about jazz after 3 weeks.
You're going to learn quicker as well. Or well, maybe it's not quicker, but you're certainly going to, the motivation to practice a song that you love is going to be...
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that motivation and the, if it's something you're interested in, you'll want to do it more. Because it's like, oh, that's the song I like, so I want to practice.
Yeah, I think there's also a little bit of a bit of showing off as well. If you can go into the school sixth form common room and impress a girl that you like, or whoever's paying for these tuitions, like, oh look, I learned Wonderwall today, or Galway Girl, or whatever. Ed Sheeran songs in the chart. Yeah, one of the songs actually, keeping it in the South Wales area. I used to teach one of the first ones, is A Minute Longer by Stereophonics, because that's only 3 or 4 chords, but it's a nice rhythm. It's like that 4-beat rhythm. There's not a lot to it because it's very slow. It's off the second album, I think. But yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one to do, even though people like a random second album track from Stereophonics, but did the job. It got your fingers moving in a certain way and opened up a few chords.
Yeah, that's what it's about. I think it's the most encouraging way. If you can get people playing something that they can recognize very quickly, then it doesn't matter that the next steps are going to be hard, because obviously we all know what it's like learning bar chords and, and all that sort of stuff. But if you can get people playing something quick, I think the encouragement then pushes you through the difficult stuff. Because then you can say, well, actually, do you know what? While I'm working on difficult stuff, I can still be learning other things that I can. Mm-hmm. And that keeps it fresh then as well. Especially, there's nothing better than, having someone who's only been playing 3 or 4 weeks leave after a lesson and say, I learned a new song today. Yeah. And then coming back a week later and saying, oh, I managed to play through the whole song with the track. And you can see that they've enjoyed that process then, and they're keen then to do the next thing and the next thing. And it definitely pushes people.
No doubt.
You mentioned barcodes there. I remember that being a particular painful moment in my journey of learning guitar. How do you approach that with students?
Good question. Usually, it's sort of a case of showing them the concept of it, and I find that the way I sort of tend to teach them is I'll show them that although a barcode can be quite daunting, if you look at it without the barred finger, what you've just got is an E and an A chord, major or minor.
Mm-hmm.
And the first step I always do is then get people to practice those E and A chords with their middle ring and little fingers. And then say, okay, well now move it up a fret and add the first finger in. And then all of a sudden then you've got the sort of the framework of what a barcode is. But yeah, they're definitely hard to teach because obviously, as we all know from learning them, they're a nightmare to get going with. And whenever I'm working with someone on barcodes, I always say it's just something you have to commit 5 or 10 minutes a day and just hammer one of those shapes and really try and get your fingers to, to listen because they are frustrating.
Yeah, but once you crack them though.
That's it. Yeah, once you get through the barrier, and it's always the same. People will have weeks and weeks of not being able to get them, and as soon as someone actually goes home and gets one, even if they're just getting 1 in 10, that'll encourage them then to keep trying. And then maybe the next weekend you'll get 2 out of 10 of them right every time, and it'll just keep building from that then. But I always, whenever I enter into barcodes, I always say to people, this is not going to be a chord that you'll get in an hour. This is going to be a a background grower.
Yeah, that is like I used the gym analogy earlier. That is a one where you have to work on it to try and get stronger, quicker, just to get through the, I don't know, pain barrier, I guess.
Yeah, describe it. No, there is a pain barrier to it because obviously you're exerting pressure on your wrist in a different way as well. That's the one, when I mentioned about videos and little things like your thumb placement, barcodes are a prime one for that because I find that the best way to get your hand, because obviously a lot of people struggle with the idea that you bar them with one finger and then the other 3 fingers are sort of arched over. I find that the easiest way to get your hand into that position is to line your thumb up with your middle finger as you do the barcode. Right. And the people that I've shown that to seem to respond well to it. I couldn't tell you where I heard it because I can't remember, but it was one of those sort of things that came onto my radar at some point, and I thought, well, that kind of makes sense. And I tried it, and I was like, yeah, that does feel pretty good. And subsequently, showing it to other people, it seems to tick a few boxes with barcodes. So you'd have your thumb sort of on the curvature of the neck, but it'd be lined up with your middle finger. And I find that sort of centers your wrist, whereas if it is off to the side, you tend to attack the barcode from a bit of an angle. But if you line your thumb up with your middle finger, it sort of straightens your arm out a bit. And I just find that makes the stretch a bit easier for people.
Okay, interesting.
Are you trying that, James? Because I can see you not. I can hear your head being away from the microphone.
Yeah, I'm currently positioning my fingers around a imaginary guitar neck at the minute. So, barcodes being a classic one, are there any other sort of big challenges or hurdles that spring to mind in the early days?
Yeah, I suppose stringing complex riffs together is always a big challenge for people, depending on what sort of music people want to learn. Obviously, sometimes you'll get people who want to learn some quite riffy songs, and stringing some of those patterns together can be quite tricky. Or often just, when people get to the point that they want to learn a bit of lead guitar, that's also a very tricky thing. Especially when, you're sort of quite new and you're starting to get into scale playing and learning the sort of technical side of playing lead. That's always interesting because, again, it's all just different sort of pressures on the fingers and using your hands in all these sort of strange ways.
So I guess it's a good point. We're starting to transition into the moving out of being the novice first few weeks into sort of getting slightly more competent. What does that transition look like? I'm thinking, right, how long does it typically take me to go from being able to play a basic Bob Dylan song to moving through to playing something a bit more complex? What does that transition look like? How many hours will I have to have done to get there? it'll probably be different for different people, but I'm just a bit of a flavour for what it looks like to go from that basic novice to then slightly a little bit more competent.
As you said, obviously it differs from person to person. Usually I find the magic time is normally 6 to 9 months for most people. Just to kind of, if I had to put an average on it, I'd say about that. Because that's the sort of point where I suppose you've gotten through some of the challenging things that crop up. And by that point, I think you've decided, this is for me. Because there is always that point where some people get up to and they learn so much and then they think, actually, do you know what? This isn't really for me.
Yeah.
So I think the first step of that is you've got to pass that point.
How many people stay the course? Like percentage-wise, how many people sort of even make it to 6 months?
At the moment, I've got quite a good retention. I think most of my students actually been with me for quite a while. I think some of my students I've had for probably 2 years at the moment.
Okay.
I've got a couple that I've had for at least a year. So I don't tend to lose too many to the dreaded 3-month curse at the moment. But it goes in phases, obviously, and it depends on who comes through the door. Because in the past, I've had, at one point I had 1 week where I think 5 people came to the same decision in the same week that that the guitar wasn't for them, and they were all around the same sort of point in their learning. But then other times you get no one. People will stick it out, So, but at the moment I'm finding a lot of people are sticking with it, which is good. But yeah, I do find that seems to be the magic amount. I think by that point you've invested enough of yourself into it to think, yeah, this is something I'm gonna, really push on with and see what I can do.
So what typically can someone do when they get to that sort of milestone?
As in, like, what sort of things could they play?
Yeah. So what level of competence have people typically got to at that point?
Usually it's sort of, you can string a song together quite competently, so you could look at a chord chart, probably work out some basic rhythms by listening. Maybe you know a couple of scales and how the technical side of lead playing works, and then it's sort of, let's pick some songs now that are slightly out of your comfort zone and start to frame those in, put all these techniques now into something that's going to push you that little bit further.
Okay. So at that point then, what does a lesson look like at that point? So obviously you're not necessarily teaching chords, although I don't know, maybe you're teaching more complex ones. How does a lesson differ at that stage versus the early days?
I often find that when you get to that sort of stage, the lessons become less practical, I suppose, and more about theory. Or not so much, not strict theory, but you talk a lot more about the concept of what you're doing. So, like, for instance, when you're talking about scales, or teaching someone how the shapes of the pentatonic fit together, it's not necessarily like right, let's practice this over and over again. It's more of a back and forth of you showing, right, these are where these shapes fit in, and look at these diagrams and working out the fretboard. So I think there's definitely more of that thinking involved in lessons when you get to that point. Right. And obviously, like I said, sort of talking about concepts and talking about things like, phrasing. How do you make a scale not sound like a scale?
Yeah. This week is brought to you in partnership with MGR Music. Ever wanted to learn an instrument, hone your skills, or pick up something completely new? You can get so far by yourself, however, professional guidance can make all the difference. With a network of tutors right across the UK and rates starting from as little as £15 per hour, visit mgrmusic.com now to get started.
Probably the charity that is closest to me at the moment, just from some recent family things, would be MacMillan, which is a cancer support charity. So I definitely say those would be, if people are going to give some money towards something, I think that's a good cause.
Yeah, definitely.
Or any animal charity for that matter as well.
Well,
anything that sort of, helps preserve animals is always good with me.
No, good shouts, and both have cropped up quite a few times over the previous episodes that we've done. So that's absolutely spot on, and we'll put links in the show notes to that for those as well. How do people's goals change at that point? 'Cause I guess on day one, it's I want to be able to play that song, or whatever their goal might have been. How does that differ once people become a bit more competent?
Usually, I often find that it's sort of the goals tend to shift to like a deeper understanding. So it's like, you might say 6 months ago, I want to play, I don't know, Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah.
And if you manage to get there in 12 months, by the end of that year, then you might say, okay, well, now I want to understand it. I want to know, how is he doing it? Why is he doing it? And that's where the real fun starts in, because then you can start, you're not just learning stuff, from a sheet. You're actually learning, I often say that's when you start learning how to play the guitar.
Mm.
You're not just learning something note for note, you're learning how to interpret things, and then you can take that stuff then and put it into your own playing, and that's where the fun really starts, because then you start to carve out your own sort of place in things.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's almost it opens up a lot more opportunities for different types of creativity, I guess. Once you learn a little bit more about something, you often have more questions because you can see more potential and more possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely a big part of, people get to a point and learning things will only satisfy you for so long, and then you want to be able to do that thing yourself. So it's like, okay, well, I can learn how to play, a Jimmy Page guitar solo, but what if I want to do my own?
Yeah.
How do I do that? And as you said, then that's where you start taking on the creative aspect of playing. And then that's where people then really start to develop themselves, because you're not just learning, then you're thinking outside the box, and you're thinking, okay, well, all these things I've learned, how can I take those now and frame them in a different way? Or, you might have 3 or 4 different favorite guitar players. How can I take something that each one of those guys has done and put those, to use at the same time? What sort of techniques are they doing? What scales are they using? How are they playing those things? You tend to think differently about learning when you get to that point, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right, yeah. Also, when I started learning like that, is because James and I formed our band. So it's also got that whole, I wouldn't say a deadline, but the whole pressure of, like, let's create the best song we can between us. You get that gang mentality, the pack mentality, the fact that you can do something loud together on a stage or in a practice room.
Yeah,
but having that focus of, we want to create something together, I think that's also very useful. People wanting to join bands and doing it for whatever reason. But yeah, it's a good thing, actually. Yeah, just even if you want to do it for yourself, as in, I can now play Stairway to Heaven. I want to try and write Stairway to Heaven Part 2. Yeah,
exactly. And I always say that to people. Like, if you want to learn how to play guitar, play with the drummer, because the second you step foot in a room with another musician, you learn way more in the first 10 minutes than you've learned in a year in your bedroom.
Definitely.
Because all of a sudden, then you're not just listening to yourself; you're listening to everyone else, and that's what really pushes you then. Because I mean, when I started, I had a friend that played drums, and I think at this point I'd only been playing guitar for maybe 3 weeks or something, and I could only play sort of like 2 or 3 riffs, and he could only play 1 beat on the drums. But we got together and we just played those things over and over again, because when we first started playing them, we didn't really know how to interact. But by the end of the day, we were playing them tight. And we both learned something from that, and it's like, actually, it's about listening as well as playing.
Yeah, I think there's an element, I think, when we started to play as the 4-piece that we were, I guess from your point, Ben, you'd have gone from, right, you wanted to learn whatever in your guitar, on your guitar in your room, because you were a fan of that song or whatever it would be. But then suddenly you had us going, well, can you play this? and it was more of a, can you play this noise, or can you play something to go along with this? Which I guess is a very different ask than, here's something that already exists, and can you replicate that, to can you create something that might go along with something else?
Yeah, I think that's it. The collaboration thing's great because, as you know, James, I am still a big John Frusciante fan, but everyone else in the band liked the Chili Peppers, but maybe not as much as me. So Rob might have been going, well, I don't want to play Chad Smith type drums, I want to play this type of drums. You have to try and, almost as you were saying before, Lee, think, well, he likes Rage Against the Machine, I like Chili Peppers. How can I combine both the sounds so it sounds different enough that it's not a rip-off of both? It's kind of like, it's a bit like working out a science equation, without making it sound ridiculous. And I think one of the good points that we're making before, my first experience in the practice room was with someone called Chris on the drums, who was very, very competent. And James and I had been practicing around one of our bedrooms for a while. We came up with a few songs, and all of a sudden, our acoustic song was currently on an electric amp, which I didn't own at the time, which was very loud, with him whacking the drums, and we were thinking, this actually sounds like a song that someone else might write. And it's that whole inspiration stroke fruits of your labour. Yeah. And then that to me made me become a better guitarist, because at the time when we wrote that song, James, I was all right. But
it was different though. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
fast
made
forward,
a difference.
Yeah, listening to other musicians is priceless when it comes to learning, because you'll learn so much by taking on what other people do. And it teaches you a lot about yourself. In, like you said, you've been creative with a drummer. You have to listen to the drummer and think, okay, well, what can I do that's going to fit with that? Or how can I interact with what these other people are doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I always say that to people is one of the most important skills. Even, to be honest, maybe even above, in my opinion, above technical skills, is the ability to interact with, especially if you want to play in a band. You look at punk bands, they're not the best players if you sort of single them out, but you put them together and you've got something really takes off. And I think that's something I've always sort of, held in very high regard, is you have to be able to play with other musicians, because that's really what's going to push you. And a lot of the work that I get, outside of teaching, ultimately comes from, I'm as a guitar player, I'm a blues guy through and through. That's, I've never been the type of guy that's been able to play, Dream Theater songs in, 32/6 time or whatever. That stuff goes over my head completely.
Yeah.
If it's not in 4/4, I'm out the door. I can do 6/8 at a push, but give me some sort of nice blues stuff any day. Yeah. But there's a million and one guitar players, that move in the same circles that are, technically would run rings around me. But a lot of the work that I've ended up with, sort of like session work, filling in for bands and whatnot, comes down to the fact that people know that if they need someone who can get through a gig without rehearsing, I can do that. I can learn your set, and I can show up, and I can play it, because I know how to interact with the band. I might not be Steve Vai, but I can fit in with a band, and so I think it's such an important skill for people. It's definitely overlooked in terms of, part of the learning process as well, because it's something you don't think about. I know plenty of guys who are awesome players, and I remember I used to go to school with this guy, and he was ridiculous at the guitar. By the time we were like 14, he was doing all this insane sort of crazy shred stuff. He one of the only people that could play stuff like Jason Becker, which is just the most face-meltingly fast stuff in the world. And he was so good, and I was like the more bluesy end of the playing. But we decided to put a band together, and he just could not interact with the other members because he was so good, and he'd spent so long practicing in a certain way that he didn't actually know how to listen to other musicians. So it's definitely something that people don't think about, I suppose.
Yeah, I totally resonates with me. We worked well as a band, but we played with a lot of other bands that technically would have been far better than us all individually, but there was almost like a competition you could see within them to who's going to play the longest in the song or who's going to be loudest in the song.
Exactly.
And you're right. It just if one of your goals in learning an instrument is to be part of a band, I think it's a great shout in terms of just getting as much practice and interaction with other musicians. I think that's a great shout.
Yeah. If you look at a song like Basket Case by Green Day, it's like what 4-5 chords, and it's a brilliant song. It's like an anthem, isn't it? But everyone's just playing together on it, and
that's it. Yeah, that's what it's all about. If you can play with other musicians, as a musician yourself, you will be better. And I think technical ability, obviously there's a level of technical ability you need, but anything beyond that, then if you can play with other musicians, then you're off to a great start.
Totally.
And I think it just helps you. It definitely helps you. You know, your ability to listen to things as well. I mean, like I did a gig recently. It's quite funny actually. Like I know a friend of mine locally plays with a band that were quite big in the 1980s. They're called Doctor and the Medics.
Oh yeah.
And he couldn't do a gig, so he said to me, "Oh, you know, can you fill in for this show?" And I said, "Yeah, no problem." So he gave me the details. He gave me the set list. And the first time I met the band was when we walked on stage to put the gear on the stage. So there was no rehearsal. There was no I'd never met them before. It was literally like as we walked up the steps of the stage, we said our hellos, you know, and then got on with the gig. And I think, you know, you have to learn those skills early on. You have to be able to just show up and play with people. It definitely helps your timing and everything else.
That sounds so daunting.
Yeah.
It is sometimes, but it didn't help. It didn't help though that this gig was outside in Bournemouth.
Right. Oh yeah.
I think it was about -2 when we went on stage. It was pretty intense. It was a good gig, but it was very cold.
I mean, the band must have put a hell of a lot of faith in whoever had recommended you as well. I mean,
oh yeah, but I think that kind of comes with that territory as well.
Yeah.
That happens a lot. I've done a lot of gigs where I've just shown up and played with a band that I've literally never met before. But I quite like the challenge of it. But you're right, though, it is daunting at the same time. But that, again, comes from your ability to listen to other musicians. That's why I always encourage people, you know, you should, if you have a friend that plays anything, just get in a room with them and try and play something together.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
I'd agree with that.
Even if it's the simplest thing in the world, if you can start to interact with other musicians, it helps your confidence with those things. Because, I mean, if I didn't do so much of that when I was younger, I definitely wouldn't have done some of the gigs that I've done like that. Because obviously, the idea of learning a set list and just showing up, and then it's like, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're off. You know, you don't even know what that first note's going to be like until you play it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You have to almost trust yourself to say, do you know what, I can play with these guys. I can play with other musicians. It's about listening to people, and so yeah, it's tense, but it's, you know, all part of the fun.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, yeah. Because I know I was listening to an interview with Dave Grohl, and he was asking all these artists what the name of their first band was, and everyone had a different name to what the band they were famous for, except for Frank Black. His first band was the Pixies, which is an anomaly. So yeah, playing with people, even if you don't really like the same type of music, you only last 3 weeks. There's always someone else who wants to be in a band, but those skills are very important.
Absolutely.
Very important.
They just help your overall, I think, rhythmic skills especially. Like, you play with the drummer, it helps your ability to make decisions on the spot as well, which isn't something that strictly happens when you're a beginner at guitar. But as you progress, you know, you said, like, what does the intermediate stage look like? Part of the intermediate stage, in my opinion, is being able to develop your own sort of thought process of playing as well. So what if you're on stage and you've got this really hard bit coming up, and all of a sudden the drummer speeds up by 15 BPM?
Sounds familiar, James.
Yeah.
You have to make that instant decision, don't you, to say, right, okay, I need to change whatever I'm doing right now in the next 3 beats. So it helps you sort of learn those, you know, the things that you can just make a decision without thinking about it, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, a lot of bands play about 10% faster live anyway, just by nature of being on stage and being there. Yeah.
But there's always the chance then that someone in the band will speed up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But again, you don't learn those skills until you play with people in that situation.
Exactly. Yeah, I think putting yourself in that situation's so exciting as well, though, because even though James and I at the time would known each other over 10 years before we even played even in one of our bedrooms together with the guitar and vocals, it was still kind of like well, what if he sounds rubbish, and what if Ben actually can't play the guitar and he just has it as an ornament in his house?
Exactly. And that's one of the things I love about those situations, because it's part of it. You could show up and it could go wrong, but you don't know until you play that first note, do you?
Yeah, definitely. So another, just talking about things that help. Then we've spoke a lot about playing with other musicians.
Yeah.
What I'm interested in, I'm interested in your views. How much value is there in learning a second instrument, a different type of instrument? I don't know whether that's the piano or whatever it might be. Is there a good optimal time to think about a second instrument? Can that confuse? Can it complement? Just interested in your thoughts in general on that topic.
Do you know what? It's not something I've really ever come up against. Most people that I've taught don't tend to ever really express an interest in a second instrument. But I suppose it all ties in with your goals as well. Like, if you're going to be the type of person that, you might want to get into music because you want to write songs, then absolutely it's worth understanding at least what other instruments do. One thing I think is useful, and I suppose this kind of ties in with the idea of playing with other musicians, is if you don't play with other musicians, you should at least understand what their roles are in the band. Especially the big one for me was understanding what a drummer does. So if you can understand how a drummer keeps time, like what are they doing on certain beats in the bar, where does the kick fall and where does the snare fall, those type of things, that'll help you then if you're getting into writing. You kind of have a framework in your head then when you come up with chord progressions or riffs, you can say, okay, well, this will line up with the kick drum, or this will fit here or there. So I think at least understanding what other instruments' roles are is important, even if you don't necessarily learn how to play it yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned it earlier as well, resources. I think it was when maybe we were talking about total guitar and other things. What are your other, if any, go-to resources that you'll constantly go back to and refer to or use on a regular basis?
For, like, if I'm looking for chords for songs or tabs, I always use Ultimate Guitar. I find that to be the most sort of comprehensive sort of library of that sort of thing. If I'm looking for something a bit more informative, I tend to go down the route of a book. So I teach a lot of graded curriculum as well. So I find that the grade books are very informative if you're doing a bit of theory. But also the strange one that I came up against, which I thought actually is one of the best investments I've ever made, is that, those For Dummies books.
Oh, yeah.
They've done a guitar music theory one, and I think it's like the best £15 I've ever spent, because it explains theory concepts framed for guitar players in a really easy way to understand, and there's no sort of extra padding around the point. It's just like, this is what it is. And I think for a lot of guitar players, we like quite a direct approach, because you can look up, if you're looking up, how a chord is constructed, it won't give you all this stuff you don't need to know. It'll just say, this is what it is and this is why. And you think, okay, I can get on board with that. So that's something I tend to pull up a lot as well.
Right, okay. I'm just thinking, there's a couple of other things I want to pick up on, but is there any other things that you would sort of say to, whether it's a novice or whether it's a really competent guitarist, that are your sort of go-to hints and tips or things to work on? Or
I always say to people that you should always have a goal. So it doesn't matter what the goal is, but I think you should always work towards something. And you should also accept that you'll never know everything. Because I think the day that you feel like you've learned everything, is the day that you should probably stop, because there's always going to be something else that's worth learning. But I think goals are definitely important, because I think goals keep you motivated all the way. So even if it's a simple goal, like it could be like, I want to learn how to play this riff, but right now I can't play it, then that sort of informs the next, month or 6 months. And you say, okay, well, to learn this riff, these are the things I need to work on. And then when you get to that point, then it's like, okay, what's my next goal? And I think it's good to have that sort of goal system in place for as long as you play.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, definitely the idea of, keep enjoying it, and, always kind of accept that there'll always be something else. Don't ever feel like you've ticked everything off.
Yeah. No, good shout. Okay. Couple of, whilst we're on guitar, as a couple of quick fire ones. What were the songs or song that made you want to learn the guitar originally?
Probably for me, it was "Run to the Hills" by Iron Maiden.
Right.
Only because, I mean, they're my favourite band, but I don't really like that song. But it was my first introduction to that sort of music. So, I mean, it was just one of those things, like sort of flicking through the music channels at age like 11, and that song just happened to be on one of the channels, and it was, at that point, I'd never seen anything like that, and it was like, wow, okay, I think that's, I think we're talking about something here, and that was the light bulb moment, I think.
This might tie in, it might not. Who's your guitar hero or idol?
There's a few at the moment. So, through being brought up on sort of classic rock, I was brought up very heavily with stuff like Cream and Led Zeppelin. So people like Eric Clapton are definitely up there. Yeah. But over the years, I sort of went back sort of even further as well. And I sort of really got into players like B.B. King and Buddy Guy and those kind of players. So if I had to pick like a single hero, I'd probably struggle. But sort of, from that era, I'd probably say like B.B. King would be one that I'm always sort of looking at whenever I want to improve something. But more recently, I've got into John Mayer as well. And since I first discovered him, that's just like blown my mind with how good he is at the guitar. So he's someone I always keep coming back to as well.
Okay.
Because he's sort of reliving those 1950s sort of playing styles, but now.
Yeah, I think there's in the first season of the podcast we did an episode on fandom.
Okay.
And there was the conversation went along the lines of a lot of things that can often draw people in is that if you rehash something, or not necessarily even rehash, but if you reinvent something that's recently been performed, then that can be a bit dull, or people have gone through it and it doesn't sort of excite people in the same way as if you go back far enough and bring something up to the modern day. That can be something that really engages with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the reason all this stuff engages with people is because it's real. I like bands that are real. It's like real people playing real instruments, and there's a certain thing that those older records had that I guess you just don't have in modern music.
Mm.
There's a certain a desire in the way that they're playing as well that is sort of been lost in time, I suppose.
Yeah, almost something a little less polished, almost.
Yeah. There's a bit human in there.
Mm.
That's probably why you like the blues.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what's your favourite song that you like to play?
What am I playing a lot of? One thing I always tend to play is a song, funny enough, by John Mayer that I mentioned, a song called "Who Did You Think I Was?" Just because there's a really cool sort of a muted riff at the start of it, where you have to sort of keep your picking hand going in like 16ths, but you're alternating muted notes and fretted notes with the other hand. So it's really sort of really challenging to get the rhythm right. But I also just find myself, I just tend to play with backing tracks a lot as well whenever I've got some sort of downtime, just because I'm always like, I always love just working on things like phrasing, thinking like, how can I do this scale better, or how can I do this lick better, or so I find that I really enjoy working on those type of things as well.
Okay, which maybe ties into the final one of these quick fire ones was which Ben had, which which song did you really hate learning, but ultimately was worthwhile and made you sort of a better guitarist?
Song by a band called Mr. Big called Green Tinted 60s Mind. And if you listen to the track, if you're not familiar with that, the intro is this insane sort of like two-hand tapping thing where you're sliding one note up the fretboard while moving the other hand down the fretboard, ready to. It's sort of all sort of crazy coordination stuff. And I always loved the song, but I always kind of knew it was a bit out of my reach. But a friend of mine dared me years ago. I think it was about 2009 or 2010, and he said to me, "I bet you can't learn that." And he was right, I couldn't. But I persevered with it, and I think it probably took me. I mean, not to say that I didn't practice it every day, but every now and again I'd pick it up again.
Yeah.
And I think it probably took me about 3 or 4 years of frustrated little practice sessions with it until I finally got it. And it just drove me mad. No, I still like the song, but the process of learning that drove me crazy because I kept getting close, and I kept just thinking, well, why can't I get it to sit? What am I doing wrong? It's probably the one thing that I've struggled to learn, but I guess it's because I've never sort of delved into that super technical side of playing. So actually to sit down and do it, I was like, wow, okay, this is actually something I'm gonna have to put my head down and work on. It gave me many hours of frustration.
Yeah. Okay, so the other thing, you mentioned a lot of other things that you do, whether it's testing various things, it was the articles that you were mentioning. So I guess partly what I wanted to talk to you about is, you're a musician, it's what you love, but you've obviously built a career, in music, doing lots of different bits and pieces. So just a bit of how some of those things came about, because I know for a lot of people, they're in a band and they'll be starting out, but it'll be a part-time sort of thing, or it'll be in the evenings or in the weekends, whilst they do whatever job that they might be doing, versus, I'm making an assumption here, but if you're teaching guitar through the day, or you're writing about music, or you're testing sort of guitar pedals, or whatever it might be, then that's surely going to be a far better use of your time in terms of enhancing your musical ability and ultimately, the progression of your band or your music or whatever it is, rather than going and doing a 9-to-5 job somewhere. So just interested in how your sort of, world of working in music sort of came about, how different things have sprung up.
Yeah, it's a good question. I've been, like most people, trying to turn it into a job for, the best part of 14 years. I've been teaching for probably about 6 years now, and I've always played in bands since I was young. The teaching thing was something I picked up, as I said, like about 6 years ago, but I used to do it on top of a full-time job.
Right.
With the aim that one day it would pay off and turn into the career. So for years and years, I sort of did this, did what we all do. I sort of got by. I worked in a clinical research company for years, and it was a good job, but ultimately it wasn't the guitar. It wasn't playing guitar all day. So I just kept pushing and pushing, and I've always prided myself on always saying yes to something. So it doesn't matter, if someone turns around and says, "Can you learn this set list in 3 days?" Yes, I can. It doesn't matter what it is, I will learn it, because I always think if you turn work down, then that work might not come up again.
Right.
So you should always say yes, especially if it's something you're working towards. Even if it's going to be a massive upheaval, you should say yes, because ultimately you're building your credibility and reliability as well. If you can say yes to someone, then they might say, "Oh, well, this person did this for me in 3 days. Why don't you speak to them?" And that's where the work comes from, is getting your name out there. But yeah, for years, I sort of juggled the various bits and pieces. But this is the year that it's really all come together for me. Earlier this year, I sat down and sort of made the conscious decision that, within the next, I set myself, I think, 18 months. And I said, within the next 18 months, I'm going to find a way to make it happen.
Right.
So the first thing I did was I went into work and I spoke to my boss and I said, look, this is my long-term plan. What options do I have? Because, I said I've worked here for a long time. I don't want to, walk out the door. But what I want to do is start moving myself in a different direction. And she was very supportive of the whole thing anyway. So it transpired then that 3 or 4 weeks later that they were planning on making my position redundant anyway. So I was like, okay, well, I could take that 2 ways. I could either see that as a big negative, or I could take it on the chin and say, do you know what? Now's the time to do it. So I was fortunate that because I'd been there for so long, I got a pretty decent sort of redundancy package, which set me up for a good few months. And the benefit of that then was all the money I made from music, I could put away.
Yeah.
And so then by the time the money they gave me ran out, I'd have more money to keep going. So the first thing I did was just advertise everywhere. Everything I could do to put my name out as a teacher. And I just, posted adverts, posters, flyers. I went to town. But at the same time, though, Matthew from MGR, I've known Matthew for a long time anyway. I've always taught for him. He's always referred students to me and whatnot.
Yeah.
But earlier this year, he sort of came to me with the idea that what he needed was someone to come on board and do some SEO writing for him. So to help them sort of boost their Google rankings.
Yeah.
And part of that then was, basically approaching guitar companies and writing articles for them. So that's where that came about, as well as Matthew sort of put me on that path. And, we made some good contacts and we ended up then securing like a column in the guitar magazine. So I write a fortnightly lesson for them on their website twice a month. And then off the back of that, then you just sort of start to reach out to different publications. So now I write for sort of a couple of different up and coming publications, some quite well known ones as well. So that's been a big boost. So but I think none of that would have come around if it wasn't for losing my job.
Yeah.
And it was like losing my job was almost the best thing that happened, because then I was able to almost give 100% of my attention to doing it.
And I think that's a key thing. I mean, as much as you obviously went through that experience and therefore the job was disappearing anyway, from what you said, you'd already made that bold commitment of, right, I'm going to have X amount of months, I'm going to set myself back to the goal setting. But you also made the point of going and speaking to your boss at the time. I think that, how much of a nervy sort of moment was that? Because I'd imagine a lot of people would be quite nervous about approaching that sort of conversation and just, the making that leap to say, right, I am actually going to leave potentially a stable job.
Yeah, it was quite tense, and I suppose the risk is that, the first thing they're going to say is no, because if they say no, all of a sudden then there's a massive block in the plan, isn't there? It's like, well, I've planned this, but now there's a problem.
Yeah, and they know you want to leave and you're still there, and
that's it, isn't it? That's it. So it panned out quite well in my case, but I know, obviously, there's probably been other instances where other people have tried the same thing and, come up very bad against it. But it actually panned out great in terms of, because they were planning on, basically removing my job from the company anyway, to make the job that I was doing, they wanted to make redundant. So it actually panned out better for me, because instead of me quitting my job, I got paid off.
Yeah.
So that was the best case scenario then, because I had a buffer straight away then to say, well, do you know what? Yeah, I can give this 3 or 4 months now, and I can just throw everything at it. And if it doesn't pan out, then I can just get another job and then, try again. But yeah, it meant, though, the first thing I noticed was as soon as I didn't have to go to work, the initial thing was, okay, well, I need to fill my diary with work. And the initial thing was, okay, students, that's the first thing. I need to be a teacher first and foremost. But what was really good, though, is I then found, okay, well, I'm not having to go to work anymore. And my current diary, like my evenings were already full. So I used to work 8 till 4, and I teach every day then from 5 till 7:30. So those slots were already full. So I already had a good starting point. But what I also had then was 8 hours a day to think about what I could do next.
Yeah.
And that was invaluable then, because all of a sudden it's like, right, I've got a lot more free time now, which is great now, because now I can like focus my energies on advertising and getting my name out there and finding work. So that's where the article thing came in with Matthew, and that was great as well, because then it was like, okay, well now I can fill my days with these other jobs.
Yeah, and I think energy is a key word that you've mentioned there as well, because anyone who's done a 9 till 5, you'll come in, you've just done a full day's shift, you'll then sit down, you'll make your tea, and then finally, once you get to the point, right, now I'm going to do my music, you could potentially already be fairly drained before you've even started.
I'm quite lucky that I'm one of those people that sort of thrives on just being constantly busy. So I find, I'm sort of in my studio by 7:30 every day doing something. If it's an article or just playing guitar or writing or whatever, I'm in here every day by the same time. And often I don't come out here until 9:30, 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I think having that thing of you have to sort of get into it with the mindset of it's not going to be a regular job, it's not going to be set hours, and it is all weird stuff. But I think that's just kind of come to the territory, really. But you're right, the energy. So you have to have that desire to be busy.
Yeah. But again, if you're doing something that you love, and if you're passionate about music, and suddenly all of your day is spent playing music, writing about music, talking about music, then suddenly the fact that you're doing it at whatever o'clock at night is suddenly far less of an issue than if it were something else.
Absolutely, yeah. I actually posted something to that extent on Facebook yesterday, I think it was, because someone did ask me recently, like, don't you ever get tired? Because I'm always, doing something. And I said, well, how can I get tired of it? Because I'm just playing guitar, It's like, it's the best job in the world.
You're always doing something in life whilst you're awake, so...
Yeah, and it's like I get to wake up every day and just, bother people about the guitar all day. I couldn't think of a better way to spend my time. And I guess I do work long hours because I sort of sit across a couple of different fields, but ultimately I don't mind. And it's one of those sort of jobs as well, I'm responsible for my own work now, so while the work is there, I will take it, because obviously it covers you then for when it's not there.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing I guess a lot of people struggle with is in getting into this kind of thing, is keeping a full diary. And, it's one of those jobs where you can forecast it to an extent, but really when you do something like this, all of your income is dependent on other people's lives. So you can forecast it to an extent, but every month is different, and you always have to be thinking ahead of, okay, well, what can I do if this doesn't pan out, or what can I do if this job doesn't come off? You also sort of have to have a plan B in place.
Yeah, I'd imagine even budgeting and everything has to be
absolutely.
fairly well planned out.
Yeah, absolutely, and even just little things like, just having an idea of how you can frame your next week if you don't have any other work. Like, what can I do with this week that's going to be beneficial? If I haven't got any work to do, what can I actually use the time for?
Yeah.
And I suppose that's the one thing I don't find it stressful, because, as I said, I'm the type of person that enjoys being busy, but there's always that mentality of you've always got to be looking for work. And I think that's a critical mindset with this type of thing as well, is you can never expect the work to come to you.
Yeah.
You always have to be proactive in saying, I'm free for that job, or I'm free for this job. You always have to sort of put yourself out there to find those jobs.
Yeah, don't be afraid to sell yourself. And
exactly.
Yeah, no,
Definitely.
It's very similar from a band perspective or a musician. In many ways, there'll be a very small amount of bands out there who, whether it's fans or whether it's record labels or whoever they're looking to draw in, will find them. But typically, you have to be the one who goes out and puts yourself out there.
Yeah, absolutely. that's how I got into the sort of the demoing thing as well. In that, I went to one of the trade shows earlier this year up in Birmingham, and I went up there to meet these guys that were running like an online teaching thing, and they were looking for teachers to sort of come on board for some video work. And that was my sole purpose for going, was just to meet those guys.
Yeah.
And upon going up there, obviously, I just went for a look around the different stalls. And have you ever been to one of those sort of trade shows that you get sort of all the big brands as well as some smaller ones?
Yeah.
And I just sort of stumbled upon this little stall with these amps that I thought looked quite interesting. And they're from a company called Cool Amplification. They're a Dutch company. And I just got speaking to the guy, and he was telling me what, it's one bloke, he builds amps on his own in his house in the Netherlands. And we just got speaking, and he was just telling me a bit about what his desires are and what he wants to do. And he was saying that, the reasons he builds amps the way he does. And just to sort of I tried a few of his amps and thought they were fantastic. They plugged into them and just fell in love with them straight away. And then just sort of a passing comment at the end, then we sort of exchanged business cards. I gave him one of my cards and said, if you ever need anyone to do any videos, give me a shout.
Yeah.
And then a week later, then he just rang me and he was like, yeah, I do. And then, and we sort of developed a really good relationship then. So he sort of sent me a couple of amps, and I've done some videos. I'm in the process of doing one this week. And then from next year, I'll be working with him now to actually grow the company in the UK. So it's actually led to further work for me, which is great again. But it just comes from, being the one to go out there and ask, I suppose. Like you said, you have to just say, what about this service? I could offer you this.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. If you'd stayed in your house that day and not made the decision to go out there to Birmingham and do that, then obviously none of that happens. So yeah, there's definitely a bit of getting yourself out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great because now I get to be associated with this company and help grow it, and they make fantastic products, and now I'm able to be part of that, which is really cool. And that just comes from asking.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all it comes down to. You just have to be the one there to make connections, and I think that's really important in everything, really.
No, absolutely. Well, look, speaking of putting yourself out there, if any listeners did want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
I've got my teaching website, which is swanseaguitarlessons.com. I've got a general website for my sort of session work, which is leighfugeguitar.com, which is currently under a bit of a revamp at the moment. So probably by the time this goes out, it'll be done. And I'm on the usual sort of Facebook, Instagram. If you sort of type my name in, you'll find me. But I love connecting with people on those as well, because even if it's just people who just generally contact me because they want to talk about guitar, that's something I just find, speaking to people about different guitars or anything music related, I'm always interested in that.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Well, when this goes out, we'll put links in the show notes to all of those.
So that was my chat with Leigh. Hope you enjoyed it. Like I say, the main bit that I want to stress to everyone is that if you're an up-and-coming musician, whether it's solo artist or in a band, then there's so many other things that you can bring a bit of supplementary income into your life while doing something that will actually ultimately help you with your music career. So it's tough. Like Leigh got a break, right, in terms of he got made redundant at the company that he was working for, and that gave him a buffer of a few months, which made it slightly less risky. So there was obviously circumstance that helped him a bit, but the reality is that there's ways and means that you can get a bit of extra money in whilst doing something that you're actually going to be more interested in. So have a look, see what the opportunities are, whether it's the ones that Leigh went down and start doing, and whether it's any of the others, and try the whole, opportunity comes along, say yes, give it a go. Let's be honest, much better doing something, testing out guitar pedals, for example, writing a review about them, that's got to be better than, sitting in the office doing the 9 to 5.
Yeah, all in.
So, thanks again, Leigh, for the interview. Top man.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one. And next week, James, we're back in the gig circuit. I'm at Northumbria University in a locker room talking to Canadian rockers, the Sheepdogs.
In a locker room?
Yeah, it was just the only quiet place we could find, and it just happened to be a locker room.
Right.
Yeah, with the Sheepdogs.
Getting ready to play ice hockey. Canadians like us.
Yes, that's true. No, but it was January, so it was very cold.
January?
Yeah, it was extremely cold.
Right, well, it's January now.
I know.
And it is cold.
It is.
Yeah, I can believe you.
But here's a little clip to whet your appetite.
Probably wet in January. You probably will be.
Yeah.
So it was a very big change. It wasn't like all of a sudden we had like big fat bank accounts and we're like, you know, doing any tour dates we wanted, but it was like certainly like a ton of publicity and opportunity. So it was very good.
All of the show notes for today's episode can be found at acpgmusic.com, along with our back catalogue of episodes. If you like what you hear, or perhaps have some improvements or specific guests you'd like us to consider, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at info@acpgmusic.com or hit us up on social media. Keep supporting upcoming artists, and we'll catch you next time.